Hello everyone, this is Saurabh from Edureka, and in today's session we'll be focusing on various loops that are available in Python. So without any further ado, let us move forward and have a look at the agenda for today. So first we'll see why to use loops. What is the reason of introducing loops in the programming world? Then we'll see what exactly are loops, and then we'll focus on various types of loops that are there in Python, namely while, for, and nested. I'll be explaining you all these three loops with examples. After that, I'll give you a brief summary of what all things that we have discussed in today's session. So I hope we all are clear with the agenda. So let us move forward and see why we need loops. Now, let us understand this with an example that is there in front of your screen. Suppose you are a software developer and you are required to create a software module for payroll processing of all the employees in your office. Now, what are the things you need? You need the salary of those employees, the bonus, and the total amount that they'll get after the end of the month, right? So all these things for each employee you need to print. So for each of the employees you need to print all these three details. Now there are two ways of executing this task. So let us see what are those two ways. So the one way is you can actually write a logic to calculate the total salary of each of the employees. That includes all the fields like salary, bonus, and total. And you are going to write that logic for all the employees that are there in your office. There might be hundreds of employees that are there in your office. So you need to write the logic or you need to write the code for all of those employees. So this process is actually pretty hectic. You need to repeat the same logic for total amount of employees that are there in the office. I'm just giving you an example of 3 employees, but what if you have like hundreds of employees? So at that time, this particular process will not work. This will not only increase the size of the code, it'll make it more complex and less efficient. Now another way of approaching this task would be, you write the logic to calculate the salary. You keep on iterating that logic for the total number of employees that are there. So when this loop runs once, it'll print the salary of first employee. When the loop runs for the second time, it'll print the salary of the second employee. Similarly, it'll keep on repeating. So if you have 100 employees, it'll repeat for 100 times. Now what advantage we get here? The major advantage that we get here is we don't need to write the logic for each employee in order to calculate the salary. We can write one logic and keep on repeating it for all the employees. So this way the size of the code gets reduced. The length of the code is reduced. At the same time, it reduces the complexity, makes it more efficient, and even increases the speed of execution. So this is just one example in order to show you why we need loops. So there are hundreds and thousands of examples that you can think of why we need loops, right? So this is just one simple example that I've shown you in order to make you understand why we need loops. So let us move forward and see what exactly are loops. Let me explain you this with the help of the flowchart that is there in front of your screen. Now what are loops? Loops basically allows us to execute a statement or a group of statement multiple times. Let me explain you this with the help of an example that is present in front of your screen. Now over here what happens, the control comes here and checks the condition. So if this condition is true, it'll go on and execute the conditional code that is here. This is nothing but the statements that are present inside the loop. So it'll execute that and again it'll go back and check the condition. So if the condition is still true, then again it'll execute the conditional code or the statements present inside the loop. And it'll keep on repeating until this condition becomes false. And the moment this condition becomes false, the control will move out of the loop and it'll execute the statements that are present after that loop. Now one thing to notice here guys is that there can be two kinds of loops. One is finite. This is actually the flowchart for the finite loops, and another can be infinite. Now in infinite loops what happens, the condition will never be false. So at that time the control will never come out of the loop. So it will keep on repeating and it will never stop. That is what infinite loops are. So basically the condition will never be false, and due to that the loop will be executed infinite number of times. Now there's one more way in order to categorize loops. That is called post-test and pre-test. In post-test loops what happens, the control will first enter the loop and then in the end it will actually check the condition. But in pre-test loops, the control will enter the loop only when the condition is true. So the condition is checked in the beginning of the loop in pre-test loops, but in post-test loop the condition is checked at the end of the loop. Now in Python there are no post-test loops present. There are only pre-test loops. So we'll focus on pre-test loops in today's session. So I hope you all are clear with what exactly are loops. So we'll move forward and we'll see various type of loops that are present in Python. So Python basically supports three kinds of loops. One is while, for, and nested. We'll look at all these loops one by one, and I'll explain you with examples as well. So first we'll have a look at while loop. So while loop is basically used when you don't know how many iterations are required. So let me explain you this with the help of the flowchart that is there in front of your screen. Now over here what happens, the control will move inside the loop only when this while condition is true. And when it is true, it will execute the body of the loop. And then again it will go back and see whether the condition is still true or not. If it is still true, then again it will execute the body of the loop and it will keep on doing that until the condition becomes false. And the moment the condition becomes false, it will come out of the loop and execute the statements that are present after the loop. Now this is the syntax for while loop. First you need to write while, then you write the expression or the condition, then you give a colon and the statements or the body of the loop. Now why we use while loop? Basically I've told you earlier as well, while loop is used when you don't know how many iterations are required. So you don't know how many times you need to execute the statements that are present inside your loop. So that is the reason why we use while loops. Now let me show you that with the help of an example. I'll open my PyCharm and I'll give you a very basic example of using while loop, and after that I'm going to increase the complexity of the code. So first we'll see a very small introductory example of while loop, in which I'm going to print the integer values between 0 to 9. That won't include 9, so it'll print 0, 1, 2, 3 till 9, but it won't include 9. So let me open my PyCharm and show you how to do that. Now this is my PyCharm, guys. So over here, as I've told you earlier as well, I'm going to print the integer values between 0 to 9, but that won't include 9. So for that, what I need to do is I need to first define a variable. Let me name it as count, and I'm going to initialize a value to it that is 0. Now after that, I'm going to use a while loop and I'll write while, and then I'm going to give a condition which says that when count becomes greater than 9, it should come out of the loop. Alright. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just type in print, let it be number, colon, comma, print count, right? Now I'm going to increment the value of count equal to count plus 1. Yep. Now when I come out of the loop, I want to print, say, goodbye. Yeah, looks fine. Now let me tell you what I've done here. I've defined a variable and I've initialized the value 0 to it. After that, I have used a while loop in which I've given a condition that says that count should always be less than 9, because I want to print values between 0 till 9, which won't include 9. Let me tell you that. So my condition says that the loop should be executed only when the count value is less than 9. The moment it becomes greater than 9, then the control should come out of the loop. After that, it's just a general syntax. I have given a colon, and then I have written a print statement that will print the count value. And after that, I have increased the value of my count by 1. And finally, when the control comes out of the loop, I want to print goodbye. So let us see whether it works or not. I'm going to run it, and as you can see that it works. So we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And finally, when the control went out of the loop, it has printed goodbye. This is just a very small example, guys. Now let me go back to my slides. Now the example that we just saw was a very simple example. So I'll increase the complexity a bit and I'll give you one more example. So let us move forward with that. So over here, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to code a little guessing game. Alright, so what happens in this guessing game? So there will be a random number that will be generated between say 0 to 20, and you need to guess that number. So the number that you have guessed is less than that random number, then it will print number is too small. If you have guessed the number that is greater than the random number, then it will print that number is too large. And the moment you guess the right answer, you'll exit the while loop and you have won the game basically. So it's just a pretty simple example, but this is a perfect example in order to show you why we use while loop. Because if you notice here, I don't know how many iterations are required in order to guess the correct answer. So at that time, while loop is a perfect solution to this problem. So without wasting any time, I'll actually open my PyCharm and show you how to execute this. So this is the code here, guys. Let me explain you each and every line that is present here. Now what happens, first I need to import a module that is called random in order to generate a random number. Now over here I've defined a variable n and I've given a value to it that is 20. Because I want the random number that is to be generated should be between the range 0 to 20. Now I've taken one more variable and I've named it as to be guessed. And over here, it should be an integer type, so I've written int, and this logic will generate the random number that I'm talking about. And this will be generated between the range 0 to 20. So how it will be generated? It will be generated with the help of random module that we have imported. So it will be n random.random plus 1. This will actually generate a random number between 0 to 20. So after that, what happens? I've defined one more variable, guess, and I have assigned a value to it or initialized the value to it 0. Alright. So now comes the while loop. Now in while loop, I have given a condition which says that the number that I have guessed, if it is not equal to the random number, then enter the loop. Now once you enter the loop, you need to input the new number, the number that you want to guess again. Now if that guessed number or the number that you are guessing is greater than 0, then again there'll be one more if condition which says that the number that you have guessed is greater than the number that has been generated or the random number that has been generated, then print number is too large. And if the number that you have guessed is actually smaller than the random number generated, then print number is too small. Now there's one more condition, that is else, which means that when the number that you have guessed is less than or equal to 0, then that means you are giving up. So it'll break, it'll come out of the loop and it'll print sorry that you are giving up. That's when your game gets over and you have lost it. Finally, if you have guessed the correct number, then it'll print congratulations, you have made it. So I hope you have understood the code that I was explaining here. So let us go ahead and execute this and see what happens. Alright, so it asks me for a new number. So it has to be between 0 to 20. So yep, I'll type 10 and let's see what happens. So it says number is too small. That means it is between 10 to 20. How about 13? Alright, so I've guessed the correct number and it says congratulations, you have made it. Now over here, as you can see, that it took only 2 iterations for me in order to guess the correct number. But what if it would have taken more iterations? I mean, I'm pretty unclear how many iterations it will take for me. So that is the reason why we use while loop, because we don't know how many iterations are required. Now we can run this program again and I can show it to you once more. Ask a new number, so I'll just type in say 14. It says number is too large, so I'll type in 11. Again the number is too large, that means it is between 0 to 11. So how about 8 guys? Number is too small. So now as you can see that already 3 iterations have occurred, and for the 4th iteration definitely the random number will be somewhere between 8 and 11. So how about 10? So congratulations, you have made it, and the control came out of the while loop and it has printed congratulations, you made it. So we'll move forward and see for loops in Python. So for loop is basically used when you know the number of iterations that are required. Unlike while loop where you are not sure about the number of iterations that are required, in for loop you know how many times the statements that are present inside the loops need to be executed. So for loop provides you with a syntax that will include 3 fields basically, or you can say 3 informations. So first will be the Boolean condition, then comes the initial value of the counting variable, and then the incrementation of the counting variable. So as you can see it from the syntax as well, first you write for, name of the variable, in the range. Then you specify the range in which that variable should be. And then you specify the range. That means from which point till which point it should be executed. So you know the number of iterations required, then only you use for loop. Now over here, as you can see from the flow diagram itself, the control comes to this and it'll see the item from the sequence. It'll execute the statement, go back again, and then from the range it'll pick up the next item. Again it'll execute the statement, again go back, and then from the range it'll pick up the third item, and it'll keep on executing until the range becomes over, or that is the last item from the sequence. So when there are no items in the sequence, it'll go on and execute the statements that are present after the for loop. So this is how for loop works, guys. Now let me just give you a very small example of how for loop works. I'll open my PyCharm again and I'll start with a very small example, and then I'm going to increase the complexity of our code like I've done that in while loop. Now over here what I'm going to do is I'm going to first define a list and I'm going to name it as fruits. So what all fruits you like, guys? I'll first type in mango, then I like grapes, and finally I'm going to write and say apple. Yep. So this is my list which contains 3 fruits, mango, grapes and apple. Now I'm going to define a for loop, and over here what I'll define a variable, say fruit. For fruit in fruits, give a colon, print current fruit and type in fruit. Now when you come out of the loop, just print again goodbye. So I have declared a list and the name of that list is fruits. Now that fruits list contains elements which are mango, grapes and apple. Now after that I have defined a for loop which says that for a variable named fruit in fruits. So this will give me the range. Fruits will give me the range. As you know that in the fruits list there are only 3 fruits. So I know it will iterate only thrice. First for mango, then for grapes, then for apple. So this is the difference between the while and for loop. In for loop I know that it will take only 3 iterations. After that print the current fruit. That's all. And when the control moves out of the loop, print goodbye. It's pretty easy guys. So go on, execute this and see what happens. So yep, the current fruit first is mango, then comes grapes, then comes apple, and then finally print goodbye. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the complexity now as I've done that in while loop as well. So I'll show you an example. First, let me go back to my slides. So what I'm going to do in this example, I'm going to calculate the factorial. Now one thing to notice here guys, again in factorial also I know how many iterations are required. Because if you see, if I'm calculating the factorial of 5 and I know that I need multiplication 5 times. First I need to multiply 5 with 4, then 4 with 3, then 3 with 2 and then 2 with 1. So this way I require only 4 iterations. So I know the number of iterations required. So it's a very good example in order to show you where we should use while loop and where we should use for loop. So let me go back to my PyCharm and execute this practically. So this is the code in order to find the factorial of a number. So over here what happens, first I need to input the number that I want to calculate the factorial of. After that I've defined a variable factorial and I've initialized a value to it which is 1. Now I have defined a condition. If the number that I've entered is less than 0, then print the number must be positive because I can't calculate the factorial for negative numbers, right? And again I have given one more condition which says that if number is equal to 0, then factorial is equal to 1. And then else condition says that when number is greater than 0, then I've used a for loop which says that for I've defined a variable I in range 1 to num plus 1. When I write num plus 1, the range will be between 1 to num plus 1, but it won't include num plus 1, so it will only be including 1 till num. Alright, so after that what I've written, factorial is equal to factorial into I. So factorial was 1 earlier, then it will multiply by I. I will also be 1 in the beginning, and then again it will go back and it will become 2. Similarly, it will keep on increasing until it becomes num. So till that time it will keep on executing the loop, and the moment it becomes equal to num, it will come out of the loop and it will print the factorial value. So let me go ahead and execute this and show you if it works or not. So I need to enter the number. So let's say I want to calculate the factorial of 3, which is 6. So if I want to enter one more number, so what I can do is I can start it once more. So what I'll type, I can type again 4. So it prints 24, which is absolutely correct. So we'll move forward and we'll see what are nested loops in Python. So Python basically allows us to use a loop inside another loop. For example, you can use a for loop inside a for loop, or you can use a while loop inside a while loop. And at the same time, you can use a while loop inside a for loop as well and a for loop inside a while loop as well. So that is basically what is called nested loops. Now we'll have a look at the example of nested loops as well, don't worry. So let us move forward and see one example of nested loops. Now over here what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a code in order to simulate a bank ATM. Alright, so for that I'm going to use nested while loop. And what will happen, first you need to enter the 4-digit PIN. and then you can perform the following functions. You can check the balance, you can make a withdrawal, you can deposit some money, and you can even, if you don't want to do anything, you can tell the machine to return your card as well. So let me show you how it is done. I'll open my PyCharm once more. So this is a code that I've written in order to simulate a bank ATM. I'll explain you each and every line, so don't worry about that. So the first line is nothing but a print statement that says welcome to Iron Bank of Bravo's ATM. Alright. And then I have defined a variable restart and I've assigned a value to it, that is Y. Similarly, chances, I've assigned a value that is 3, and this is the balance that I'm going to initialize, that is 67.14. Notice you over here, you won't get more than 3 chances in order to write the correct password. Now comes the while loop, which says that when chances are greater than or equal to 0, at that time what it'll do, you need to enter the PIN. So you need to input the 4-digit PIN that you have. And if that PIN is 1234, then it'll print that you have entered the correct PIN. Now comes one more while loop, which says that while restart should not be in this particular tuple. That is, the value of restart should not be N, capital N-O, small n-o, or capital N. So it should not lie within this particular sequence, that is N, capital N-O, no, and N. But we know that the restart value is Y, so it will enter the while loop. Now over here, what will happen? It will give you 4 options. First option is in order to check your balance. For that you need to press 1. To make a withdrawal, you need to press 2. In order to pay in some cash or you need to deposit something, you need to press 3, or you want your card back, you need to press 4. So these are the 4 options that will be given to you. So when you choose option 1, it will print the account balance. So over here, as you can see, that your account balance is, and the balance that is there in your account. After that, it will ask you for restart. So you need to input that value. So that will say, would you like to go back? And if your restart value lies in this particular tuple, then it will break and it will print a thank you statement. But if you want to continue or you want to go back, then you can press anything else apart from small n, no, or this no, or capital N. So if you press any other button apart from these, it will actually go back, and in the while statement, as you can see, it says that it is not present here. So it will give you all these 4 options once more. Now after that, what if you choose the another option in which you need to make a withdrawal? So for that, what will happen? You need to enter the amount that you would like to withdraw, which can be a float number. It cannot be an integer number. So that's why I've used float here. So you need to enter that value. And once you enter that value, it will check whether it is in this particular list or not. That is 10, 20, 40, 60, 80 or 100. Now by default, it will give restart Y because you need to enter the amount once more. So again, it will go back and it will give you all 4 options. So you can choose that withdrawal option again, and you can choose a number which is present in this particular list. Now when you choose withdrawal equal to 1, at that time it will again ask you, please enter the desired amount. So this is for option 2. Now when we talk about option 3, it is pretty much similar to the couple of options that we have discussed before. So it is pretty much similar to that. Over here again, whatever the amount that you want to pay in, how much amount that you would like to pay, and balance plus the amount that you are depositing. So it will print the balance that will be equal to balance plus the amount that you're depositing. Again, it will ask you for restart. If you press anything apart from this particular tuple, then it will go back to the while statement and it will give you all these 4 options. Similarly for option 4 as well. Now what happens when you enter the incorrect PIN? So there's one more condition in the end which says that if the PIN that you have entered is not equal to 1234, then it will print that incorrect password and it will decrease the chances by 1. So earlier you had 3 chances. If you press the incorrect PIN once, it will decrease your chance and it will make it as 2. Again, if you write the incorrect password, then again it will make it as chances equals to chances minus 1, which will become 1. And if the third time also you do the same thing, then the chances will become 0. And the moment it becomes 0, then it will print no more tries, break, it will come out of the loop. That's all, guys. So let us go ahead and execute this and see what happens. So please enter your 4-digit PIN. So I'll just write 1, 2, 3, 4 and it'll give me 4 options, which is 1 for balance, 2 for withdrawal, 3 for pay, 4 to return a card. So if I want to check my balance, I'll put in 1. So it has printed my balance, which is 67.14. And then the restart value that I was talking about, it is asking for that. Let me just make it big for you. Yeah. Would you like to go back? So if I press N here, it'll come out of the loop and it'll break. And if I press anything apart from small n, capital N-O, small n-o or capital N, it'll actually go back and give me all the four options that were there. So if I press Y, it'll again give me all the four options that are there. You can see that press 1. So again, if I want to make a withdrawal, I'll press 2. How much amount that I would like to withdraw? Say I want to withdraw 10. So my balance has reduced from 67.14 to 57.14. So would you like to go back? So I'll again press Y and it will give me all four options. If I want to pay in something, that is I want to deposit something, I'll press 3. How much amount that I would like to deposit? I'll say 10. So my balance became again 67.14. Again, it is asking me, would you like to go back? No, I don't want to go back. So I can type in N. So yep. So it says thank you. And again asking me for 4-digit PIN. So let me show you what happens if I write the incorrect PIN. Say if I write 111, incorrect PIN. If I write that PIN again incorrect, again incorrect. So we have no more tries. It'll come out since I've exceeded the chances that I was given. So I was given 3 chances. I couldn't write the correct PIN in those 3 chances. So it'll come out of the loop and it'll stop. So this is an example of nested while. Now let me go back to my presentation and I'll show you an example of for loop as well. So this is an example of nested for loop. So over here what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a code in order to print the Pythagorean number between a particular range. So what happens is, suppose if I want to enter the number 20, that means I want the Pythagorean numbers between 1 to 20. So Pythagorean numbers are nothing but the integers which satisfy a square plus b square is equals to c square. So at that time, it will print all the Pythagorean numbers that are possible between 1 to 20. 3, 4, 5. You can see that 3 square, 4 square is equals to 5 square. 9 plus 16 is equals to 25. Similarly, it goes for 5, 12, 13, 6, 8, 10, 8, 15, 17, 9, 12, 15. Similarly for 12, 16 and 20. Don't worry guys, I'll go back to my PyCharm and I'll explain you how you can do that. So this is the example of nested for. So first over here I need to import certain modules in order to use the square root function. So from math module I'm going to import the square root function. After that it'll ask me for the number. In the example, if you can remember in the slides where I've written 20, so it has printed the Pythagorean numbers between 1 to 20. That same number it will ask me and it will print the Pythagorean numbers between 1 to n. So whatever the number n that I'm going to put in or give an input. After that, it will run a for loop and it will say that for a, which is a variable, in range 1 to n plus 1. That means 1 to n. That means 1 to n plus 1, but don't include n plus 1. After that, there's one more variable b, which is in the range a comma n. That will not include n. It will only include till n minus 1. So the square root c square, I've defined one more variable c square, is equal to a exponent 2 or a to the power of 2. Similarly, b raised to the power of 2. Alright, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to calculate the square root, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to define one more variable c, and it'll be an integer that will be the square root of c square. So if that c square is minus c square is equal to 0, then print abc. It's pretty simple logic, guys. Alright, so I hope you have understood the code that I've explained to you here. Now let us go ahead and execute this and see what happens. Yeah, so the first number that I'm going to type in, say 5, and it'll give me all the Pythagorean numbers present between 1 to 5. So we have only one Pythagorean number, that is 3, 4, 5 in that range. Now I'll execute this once more and I'll type in 10 here. So we have two Pythagorean numbers that are 3, 4, 5 and 6, 8, 10. Similarly, if I execute it once more and I type in a big number, say 25. Yeah. So we have these many Pythagorean numbers present between 1 to 25. We'll again go back to our slides and we'll have a look at one more example. Now in this example, I'll actually be using a for loop inside a while loop. So what is this example? I want the bulk reservation of train tickets. So I have like group of people who are traveling somewhere and I want to give their details such as name, age and sex. I want that to happen in bulk. I don't want to give it one by one. I just want it to happen in bulk. So for that what I'm going to use is I'm going to use a for loop inside a while loop. As I've told you earlier as well, you can even use a while loop inside a for loop. But for now, I'll use a for loop inside a while loop and see what happens. So let me go back to my PyCharm. So this is the code in which I'll be using a for loop inside a while loop. So first I have defined a variable traveling, so in which you need to input whether yes or no. So if you're traveling, you'll say yes, obviously, and then we'll have a while loop which says that while the condition is traveling equal to yes, that means if you're willing to travel, enter the number of people who are traveling. So you need to enter the number of passengers that are traveling, and that will be assigned to a variable num. Now there'll be a for loop which says that for num in range 1 to num plus 1, but it won't include num plus 1, enter the name, enter age, and finally whether the person is male or a female, and then print all those values. Now one more thing here is, again it'll ask you whether you have missed someone or not. So you need to input that. Oops, forgot someone. So at that time you can write in yes if you have forgotten someone. Then again it'll execute the loop. Again it'll ask you the number of people traveling and all these details. If you type in anything apart from yes, that means you have not forgotten anyone, and it'll come out of the loop. So it is a very small example, but a very good example to understand how for loop can be used inside a while loop. So let me go ahead and execute this. Whether you're traveling, I would say yes, I am traveling. Number of people traveling, I would say 3. Name is Saurabh. Age is 78. Male. Alright, so again it has asked me for one more name, so I'll say Neil. Age is 90. Male or female? Male. Yep. So one more name I need to type in. Say I would type in Jagriti. Age is 98. Male or female? Female. And yep, it'll print all those details for me. So now it is asking, have you forgotten someone? So if I type in and say yes, then it'll again ask me the number of people traveling. That means it's again executing the while loop. So if I would say the number of people traveling is 1, and I would type in the name of the person that was traveling, so I would just say Siddharth, whose age is 77 and he's a male. Yep. Again it has asked me, so if I type in anything apart from yes, say if I type N, so yep, it'll come out of the loop, and this is how you can actually use a for loop inside a while loop. So this was an example of a for loop inside a while loop. Thank you and have a great day.